Thanks, John. Welcome, everyone, to Stonebriar. It's always dangerous when you give a pastor a microphone, but I promised only to take a few minutes before you get on with your morning. It truly is a blessing that we've been able to host this for about 15 years. It's the right thing for us to do. And I get a chance to tell a story, and they don't let me tell stories anymore because I've been here too long since a new group, so I get to tell a story, right? So there was a guy sitting in a hole, and a doctor walked by, and the guy yells up at him and says, "Help me! I'm in this hole. I've been in here for a long time. Can you help me?" The doctor kind of looks around, doesn't understand where the voice is. "Hey, I'm down here." And the doctor looks over and goes, I tell you what, call my office. I'll get you in as soon as I can, and I'll write whatever script you need. But yeah, just call my office. And he kept walking by. And then there was a pastor. The pastor comes walking by, and the guy yells, "Hey, help me. I've been stuck in this hole for a long time. I want to get out. Help me." Pastor hears a voice, and the guy yells again, "Help me. I'm down here." And the pastor looks down the hole and goes, "Yeah, I tell you what, I'll pray for you, and when you get out, why don't you come and see me, and I'll buy you a cup of coffee," and walks on. Then a guy's walking by, and the guy goes one more time, "Help me. I'm in this hole. I can't get out. Somebody help me." Guy jumps in the hole with him. And the guy stuck in the hole goes, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck in this hole. I need help." And the guy who jumped in goes, "Don't worry. I've been here before. I know how to get out." Loneliness is an epidemic. Job transition. We've been in this ministry for a long time. Isolation. Some of you can't believe you're here. Some of you can't believe you're still here. That's one of the the results that everyone faces is some degree of isolation. Some of our identity has been associated, and I'm not going to wail on that because we all have that. We enmesh ourselves into our work, and to grab that part of our identity is not inherently wrong. We find our identity in Christ, but the reality says that is what you've done every single day. And now that has changed. And it's this weird place. You feel like you're stuck in a hole. You're yelling, "Help me get out. Where do I go?" And for the most part, it's just an echo. People you knew are no longer returning your calls, or they're just a little awkward in terms of conversations. You look in the mirror, you aren't even sure who that is. And that it's paradoxical, because in a world where we are more connected in theory than ever, from my end as a pastor and the type of pastoring that I do, care pastoring, we are absolutely more alone. And a job transition does not help that. And so that's one of the reasons why we do this. There is going to be great information. The content through the years has been spectacular. It's been helpful, and it's necessary. But part of the reason we do this, why a church does this, is because of the relational core that we believe God designed into every single one of us. And that's been changed because of this job transition. And that's a good and right thing for us as believers to help. You know, and those of you who do believe know our New Testament. There's 50 plus some one another's in Scripture, where it talks about one another. You do this to one another. You do this to one another. Do this for one another. Meaning, if you are a believer or if you have an interest in God, one anothering is essential. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to one another. We're trying to, meaning help another. So here's my encouragement. If you feel really isolated, if you aren't sure and that loneliness is becoming increasingly prevalent, my deepest hope, my deepest prayer is to take that risk, and uncomfortable at times, and maybe to put yourself in a position to walk alongside with someone. Ask them. Take someone to a cup of coffee, something that moves you from this isolation into some kind of a relationship. It's important. It's really important. And maybe even jump in a hole with somebody else. Jump in a hole with somebody else. Father God, I pray that you move here today. That we aren't wise in our own eyes. That we never get too far in front of you to think we know how to do this thing. Or Lord, that we're so far behind you that we don't even know where you are. Let us stay close enough to you so that our eyes are your eyes, our ears are your ears, and our heart beats in time with you. Lord, help us jump in a hole with someone. Help us find the way out. And that way out may be just a phone call, a cup of coffee that leads to another phone call and another cup of coffee. And a relationship, a one anothering starts, for that is what you've asked us to do. So Lord, I present all who are gathered here this morning and all who will lead this time. Use this time for their good and for your glory. It is in your name I pray. Amen. Guys, thanks for taking the time to come, and I pray this morning is great for you. Thank you.
How's everybody doing? That was pretty pathetic, but we're going to roll with it. First of all, thank you for being here. I'm incredibly flattered and honored to have the opportunity to talk to you today. I didn't think I would be here, to be quite honest with you, given kind of the last couple of years of what I've been up to. I'm like you from the standpoint that my last job, I owned a magazine, and it was killed by COVID. So effectively, I'm unemployed, but I did the chicken's way out, and I retired instead. And then had to figure out what I was going to do with all the time I had. My background, real quick, I'm a recovering corporate executive, I like to call it. I spent a significant part of my career in consumer products, companies you've heard of like Coca-Cola, Frito-Lay, PepsiCo, Colgate-Palmolive. My favorite job was with Coors. I was an expert on that particular product and fit right into it. So after the corporate gig, I actually, when I went to Coors, it's probably the greatest job I'd ever expected to get. At the risk, where's the Stars fan in the audience? Oh, there she's over talking. I was the vice president of national account sales for the United States for Coors, which meant that I could take my clients to any sporting event anywhere in the country, anytime. At Coors, we had season tickets to every professional sports team in every professional sport. So literally pick a city, pick a team, I could get great seats and take people there. It was the greatest job ever. Unfortunately, I had somebody I was working for that, let's just say I didn't get along with his philosophy about management. So after about 3 years, I left. And before Coors, I'd never really looked for a job. I was always recruited. And I found myself at home thinking, well, this is easy. I'll just, a recruiter's going to call me. Well, I was in my basement because I lived in Colorado. We had basements for 2 years. 2 years. Trying to figure out what I was going to do. So the job search, it's a tough time. And I recognized that. And I made a promise to myself. Didn't know how I was going to fulfill it, but I said, if I ever get out of the basement, I will do everything I can to help people that are in their own basement. So that's why I'm here today, and it's a really interesting route that I got here. When I was retired, thanks to COVID, let's see if I can do this right. There I am, going backwards. What am I doing? Giving you my whole presentation. There we go, sorry. So when I was retired, I'd helped lots of people along the way with interview prep and all that kind of stuff. I hired countless numbers of people. I've been a candidate more times than I care to admit, but so my life is kind of a series of train wrecks interspersed with some great careers for a couple of years. So all of my kids who are grown adults, successful in their own way, had suffered through my coaching. And so my daughter, after COVID retired me, suggested that I write a book about interviewing. So let's see if I can do this. Why do I do that? This is a test, Leahy. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to do a shameless plug. So this book is really just a compilation of my opinions about interviewing. And my daughter encouraged me to write it. She bribed me by saying that she would edit it if I gave it my salesman's first attempt. And I'm very proud of it. And it's available on Amazon if anybody wants it. If you can't afford it, and I realize when you're looking for a job, that's every penny counts, see me. I'll help you. That's my phone number. Please write it down. Please call me, text me. Just let me know, remind me where we met. And I'm going to be here as long as we need to be, so if anybody wants to talk to me afterwards. I made my email super easy. It's just the name of my book at proton.me. So that's me. And quite honestly, I said it's kind of a weird how I got here. I finished this book because my daughter forced me to do it. When I was finished, I said, okay, I'm done. And books on Amazon, box is checked. I'm a happy guy. My daughter's happy. So I was not going to do anything else. I was just going to write this book. Don't ask me why. Then I was meeting a friend of mine for coffee that I meet every week. He's an attorney, and we do a lot of networking together. And I happened to, our normal meeting, he couldn't make it, so we happened to show up at Market Street in Colleyville on a Friday morning. And there was this lady there moving tables around and making a lot of noise. And she came over, as she would, to apologize to us for making all this noise. And it was Judy Wardle from South Lake Focus Group. And she apologized, put a big bag of candy on our table, which she also does all the time. And my friend Christopher said, what are you doing here? And she said, we're setting up for a networking event. Of course, his ears perked up. And what networking event? Well, it's South Lake Focus Group, and we help people that are in job transition. And he said, well, he just wrote a book about that. And Judy's like, really? You should come. So that was in November. And I go there every Friday. I'm usually there for 4 or 5 hours, depending on how many people want to talk to me. And it's fantastic. It's really a blessing to be able to help people think through this process. And with that, let me see if I can move the slide forward. I'm going to talk about 3 things. I'm going to try to keep it simple. I hate being up here on this stage because I'm afraid I'm going to fall off. But first of things, just a little bit about strategy. And then how do we focus on the right things for an interview? And then lastly, the goal from all of this is so that when you get into an interview, you're as confident as you can be. So let's start with this. And oh, by the way, this is not, what I hate about being on stage is it sounds like I'm up here giving you a presentation. I don't want that to be the case. I would like this to be an interactive discussion. So I would love to have you ask me questions at any point. There's nothing formal about this. These slides are very basic. Pete, yeah.
Anybody who has a question, please wait for the mic so we can all hear you.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Foster, for letting me do this. So everybody probably recognizes these three rectangles up there. They're sports courts of various kinds. We've got a basketball court, a football field, and a tennis courts. It could be pickleball courts. I don't know. Does pickleball court look like that? Why do people like pickleball? I don't know. So we kind of grow up in this world of everything's clear, distinct boundaries. You know, tennis courts always the same size. Doesn't matter where you go in the world. Football field, at least in the United States, is always the same size. Basketball court, same size, same width. So we're used to that. We're used to those boundaries. It gives us comfort. It gives us the ability to feel safe within that space. We know the rules. We know how to play the game. Everything's fine. So why do I pick golf of all the things? Golf is the craziest, unpredictable sport there is. In fact, a lot of people that play football debate whether golf is a sport. It's infinitely variable. Every golf course is different. Every day on every golf course is different. And so there's no way that you can really think about how we're going to win that. And what I figured out is interviewing is like golf. It can really mess with your head. And the biggest challenge that I see when I was hiring people, when I'm coaching people, is this. We overthink this way too much. And that's really the goal for today, is to say, how do we develop a strategy that's going to give you the most confidence possible? And that's really, if there's one thing I ask you to take away from this, is just think about, break it down and keep it simple. So there's three things that I believe are the critical components of a great interview. And the first is preparation. Because if you don't do the prep work and you just show up and hope, it's probably not going to go well. Because where's Ron? You call them showstoppers. That's when you do a showstopper. When you're riffing on the fly because you're completely out of your depth on a question. It's a very dangerous thing to do. So being prepared and doing the work, and we'll talk a little bit about this in more detail. Secondly is getting organized, and the ability to get yourself organized for an interview, to me, is very important. And I'll show you something that I did. You don't have to do it, and I'll explain it. And we'll talk about that for a second. And then lastly, actually executing the interview is part of this whole strategic plan. Do you have a plan for how are you going to act in that interview? What are some of the things you're going to do? And be ready to do them. Most people don't, but you can. Look at Bill Belichick, won 7 Super Bowls. He didn't just show up on Sunday and said, okay, guys, let's go play. He had a plan, and their job was to do their job and execute. So I did it again. So let's talk about being prepared. So let me ask you a question. Who has done some work on soft skills? I'm going to walk down here. Sorry. Yes. What's your name?
John,
Hi, John. Talk to me.
I did the strength finder.
No, I don't have to scream.
Thank you.
I did the strength finder, the Clifton strength finder.
Yeah. Talk to me about that. Who's done that? A lot of people. Do you like that exercise? Yes, good. Okay, yeah, John, keep going.
Well, I more or less knew what the results were going to be, but it's interesting how important those soft skills are. And I came into this thinking that soft skills weren't that big of a deal because they're not. It's hard to provide evidence that I have soft skills, whereas I can detail all my hard skills.
If you have a certificate for Python,
Right,
you got a certificate
exactly.
for Python. Right. So what did you do with it?
I'm working it into my resume, into my my personal brand, using it more, and I'm kind of embracing those soft skills more than I did before.
That's fantastic. Anybody else? Yes, sir. What's your name? We have a mic there, Pete.
My turn.
Pete's going to get a workout today. Oh, is this the rule? The person with the mic has to take it to the next guy. Yes. I like that.
The other guy with the mic is in the back over there chit-chatting.
Of course. That wouldn't be Foster, would it? Big surprise. Yes, sir. Okay, go.
Yeah, yes, I work on soft skills all the time with mirroring or researching somebody to find out things that we've had in common. Just yesterday, I was speaking to somebody and mentioned, yes, they work for Cognizant a few years back, and said, oh, I've led some teams that had both Cognizant and Accenture there. But, it's all about arranging the room correctly if you can for your interview, making sure there's no dividing lines sitting on the corners instead of across something. It's same skills you'd use if you're going on a first date.
Good. When people, there's a few folks here that I've seen on Friday over at Market Street, and my shtick that I usually do when somebody sits down at my table is the first question I ask them is, what are you good at? And it's funny because that's really not a hard question. But you'd be amazed at how many people aren't ready for it. So from a soft skills standpoint, it's everything, in my opinion. I mean, philosophically, as a hiring manager, I looked for three things. Again, three. Can you do the job? Will you do the job? And will you fit into the culture of my team? Those are the three things. So, your resume, which is critical, and we have fabulous people here that help with resumes, and if you haven't had a chance to sit down with one of them, you absolutely should. They will get your resume perfect, ready for ATS and anything you need to do from an application side. You can make sure your LinkedIn profile, Terry Sullivan, amazing. Everybody should hear Terry speak to get that LinkedIn profile as good as it can get. All of these things are important. People say, what's the most important thing to do when you're looking for a job? Everything. You have to do all of it. But lastly, you got to figure out, what am I good at? My book is called Taking the First Step for a reason, because most people don't. The first step, in my opinion, is figure out who I am. Right now, today, at this point in my career, who am I? Because I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I've changed. I've developed more skills. I've developed more abilities. So I need to take an inventory and assessment of my skill sets, and I need to write them down and own them. And then I want you to think about, if you were going to explain to me, John, where are you? I'm going to make you yell at me because you don't have a mic. What's your number one skill?
Empathy.
Empathy. Interesting. That's a great skill. I love empathy. I'm not sure I would lead with it, but that's okay. So empathy is a great soft skill. Who has another soft skill? You're a maximizer. That is awesome. And I'll bet you can tell me what that is, right? She is. Listen, I sat down with this lady, and she is amazing. If you don't know her, you need to talk to her. What's a maximizer? Ooh, I like that. So anyway, I have a sheet. If anybody wants to email me, I'll give you a cheat sheet. It's got about 60 soft skills on it, and it's a great place to start. Happy to send it to you. Or come by on Friday over to Market Street, and I'll give it to you personally. All it is a checklist, and what I tell everybody is, most of you, if you look at my checklist, you're going to check half of them. Because empathy's on there, by the way, John. Good job. But the key is now I got to start really focusing in on, what am I really good at? Can I really distill it down from 20 or 25 down to the top 10, Letterman's top 10 list, and then my top 5, and then force rank those 5. so that you know if somebody says, what are you good at? I'm good at this, 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 and this. And you say it better than that, but you are able to articulate very quickly and very confidently that you know what you're good at. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is stories. Stories make all the difference in the world. And being able to articulate a story to show a skill is something that we don't work on enough. I believe in writing them down. If I can, I'll tell you a quick story. I was hired by Coca-Cola, Atlanta Coca-Cola Bottling Company, to run their North Georgia division. It was about a $150 million division with about 400 employees. And not long after I started there, the company was turned part of a new formation called Coca-Cola Enterprises. That was a spinoff from Coca-Cola. And in with that came a new CEO, and in with the new CEO came a whole bunch of new metrics and KPIs. And I found out my new group that I had just taken over and had been there for about a month, I was last in cases on display. So you go to Tom Thumb or you go to Kroger and you see that gigantic lobby display right before the first Cowboys game, and there's 1,000 cases of Coca-Cola. That's what we shoot for. That's one of our KPIs. I was last. So I had to figure out, because I had a very rural market. I wasn't metro Atlanta. I was everything north of there. So little towns like Rome, Georgia, and Dalton, Georgia. But the one thing we had was Walmarts, 17 of them. So I went and met with every Walmart manager to find out what I could do to get more displays. And we had, you've seen all this stuff, Coca-Cola logoed everything, right? You can get anything with the logo on it. We had all that stuff, and I actually had a budget for it. But the budget was for Coca-Cola merchandise that was sold to us by Coca-Cola corporate because they made a profit on it. And I had about $30,000 in that budget, but I could only use it for Coca-Cola. So I had to figure out how to get my cases on display up. So I came up with this crazy idea based on the feedback from the Walmart store managers. And I went to the chief financial officer of the company and I presented my idea that if they would free up that $30,000 so I didn't have to buy Coca-Cola stuff, I could make my numbers. They said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to buy a bicycle from Walmart and give it back to them to give away. And they will get a merchandising allowance that I will spend in their store to give away a product. So I took us from 170 cases on display average to 2,500. From last to first through those 17 Walmarts. And that was simply by looking for the opportunity, selling the idea to the CEO, and then going out and executing. So that's a story that I tell when I talk about creative problem solving, which is one of my skills. And I would encourage you to be able to tell stories just like that about your skills. How many can do that? Great, I see some hands. Who's a volunteer? You're going to tell us a story right now. No hands, right? Yes, please. Microphone, please.
Come in, Brian. Come
I am so proud of you. What's your name? Brian, you're the man. Thank you for doing this.
I joined my last organization, and the entire group was parking and valet, food service, and no one on our campus thought we had any value. So working with the leaders, they were beaten down. You can't imagine 25,000 employees, 2.1 million patients, and 15,000 parking spots. No complaints? No. So we worked hard to partner with key leaders throughout the organization, shared with them what our values were, how we could serve them better and support them. To get their support for our team, we turned around our satisfaction scores from 25% to over 90% in just 3 years.
Fantastic. A round of applause for that story. First of all, I like that for a couple of reasons. Thank you for standing up and having the courage to do that. A lot of people wouldn't. Secondly, it was pithy. It was short and to the point, which is really critical. Stories need to be short and to the point. Interviews are timed, typically. You know, if you're lucky, you get 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour. You don't want to waste that time by telling a story that goes off into where you were born and what you did for your childhood and all those kind of things. It's a dangerous trap. It's a trap. So if you're not really organized and pithy on your stories, it's going to get you in trouble. So the other thing that I believe, once you get an interview, it's doing the research on the company that you're going to be talking to. I tell a story in my book about a guy. I was the vice president of sales for a division of Colgate-Palmolive. We were about a $1.5 billion company within our own right. And we were in the pet food business. And this guy came in to be interviewed for a regional manager job. And he was incredibly prepared. I've never seen anybody with such preparation to talk to somebody from Colgate. Unfortunately, I didn't work for Colgate. I worked for Hill's Pet Nutrition, a wholly owned division of Colgate. And he asked me all about our balance sheet and about our stock performance. And I'm like, dude, I sell dog food. Come on, man, you got to be better than that. And he had no clue. He never bothered for 1 second to find out what Hill's Pet Nutrition did. He just heard Colgate, and he didn't get the job. And that's just not good research. So research can come in lots of forms. I mean, obviously, Mr. Google helps us. It's a great place to start. If the company's big enough to have websites, which most do now, you can learn a lot there. I'm a big fan of screen grabs. I print everything I can get my hands on that makes sense. I've done guerrilla stuff. Go down to the company. If they have an office, just walk in. Ask the receptionist how they like working there. Find out stuff. Don't be afraid. You gotta go crazy when you're in a job search. You gotta take risks. I coached a kid who had a master's degree in finance. He was 25 years old, really smart kid, super introvert. So he was struggling a little bit with his interview prep, and he was interviewing with Fossil, the fashion brand. And they have stores around here. Well, I think he went to the one in Plano because I told him to go. Asked the store manager if he could have 10 minutes of her time, and started asking her questions about how the store was being run. And she talked to him for an hour about how screwed up their financials were, and they could never get a P&L on time out of the finance department, and she just wouldn't shut up. And he took like 20 pages of notes, and then went into the senior vice president of finance and didn't tell which store, but he said, how are you guys doing this? And they hired him just because he did that work. And he found out something that they didn't want to necessarily hear, but huge props to him for going out. I had to push him to do it, which is what I do. But he did it, and it was successful for him. So, you know, I'm a big fan of Market Watch, you know, going on to financial pages. If you're talking to bigger companies, you know, look, Google has a finance, you know, Yahoo Finance, whatever it might be. And just see what the company's doing, because they do press releases. You can go to the investor tab on a company website and you can see all their press releases. Find those things, because that's how you're going to generate the questions that you're going to ask. Yes, Foster?
I don't know if this is on, but I don't really need this thing. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, you're on.
I don't. Guys, there is a website called Crunchbase that I want you guys to check out. It gets together a lot of information that companies have to report to the government. So you can find out some things that are going on Crunchbase. You can find out about these companies. Peter, I'm glad you said being cognizant of the company that you're applying for. Guys, doesn't that make sense? So if you can tell those guys something they don't even know about their own company, you got their attention. Now, I want to, and you may have already covered it because I went outside for a minute, but to me,
Yeah.
and I've hired lots of people.
Yeah.
It's important in that interview that you keep eye contact with me.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Thank you, though. That's a great lead. So So getting your sort of house in order to be able to tell your story, writing your stories. I encourage you to write the top 5 skills. Write a story, write it out, type it out, full, and then memorize it. I did a presentation in the South Lake Focus Group a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about Meryl Streep. She won 3 Oscars and 18 Oscar nominations. Meryl Streep does not show up on the first day of the set and say, okay, what are we doing? She's had the script for at least 6 months, maybe longer. She's memorized every word of it so well that she becomes the character. And that's why she's so good, is she's just unbelievably proficient at internalizing the stories that she wants to tell as the character and then emoting on camera. And we have to be that serious about an interview to be able to do that effectively. So let's talk about organization. So this I'm going to smile through this, Ron. I'm going to be looking at you the whole time. So we have a fabulous team called the Pit Crew. You heard Ron speak briefly. He's very humble. They do an unbelievable job of helping you in sort of a friendly fire, is that fair, kind of situation. This is a real interview. They're prepared, and they're going to take you through your paces, and everybody should get on their docket as soon as possible. But so one of the things that I like to do, and this is a Peter Leahy thing that I started 30 years ago, because I'm a sales guy, okay? So I'm not the most organized guy on the planet. So when I would go to an interview, I'd done all the research, I'd gotten as much data as I could find from as many different people. I had tons of pages of notes, I had lots of different stuff. So I would put it in a notebook and I would bring it with me. So I brought a couple of examples. Ron, please don't say anything. So this is what most people would bring to an interview. Is that fair? It's kind of a portfolio. It's got a blank sheet of paper. Maybe it's got an extra copy of your resume. It should. Maybe it's got a copy of the job description. It should. And it has a pen. So I like that. And at a minimum, absolutely, you have to do that. Mine is a little different. And what I want to stress to you about both of them is they're tools for you. These are not presentation binders. These are not things that you would ever even mention to the person that's interviewing you. You just show up with it because this is your Bible that has all of the information you're going to need to be successful. In this particular case, I use these really fancy $5 notebooks that you can get at any office supply store because it has a clear plastic sheet in the front. And then I print a cover page for the company that I'm interviewing with, and I put the title of the job that I'm going to be interviewing for on the front. Inside, it has extra copies of my resume, and it has 10 tabs in it. And these tabs are dynamic. They can be anything you want them to be. The ones that I have are just a suggestion that I've used in the past that worked for me. I have a tab with the job description in it. I have a tab with the company overview that I ripped off of their website and printed and punched and put in here. I have a copy of their mission statement. I have a copy of their vision and values, if I can find it, what their products and services are. I've researched that, and I've got copies of their main products. I have all of my stories that I've written that when I go to an interview, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, I review these right up until the moment I go in. I have a bullet list of each one of my skills, and then I'm refreshing my memory on the stories so that when I'm in, I'm prepared. I have a tab in here for blank pages for notes. I have all of my questions that I've typed out in advance in a Word document, printed them out, and put them in the book. And then lastly, I do keep some resumes, as I said, in the book. So the whole idea of this is that it sends a message that doesn't have to be stated. When I show up, I just sit down and I put this on my lap. most interviewers will go crazy wanting to know what it is. I don't say anything. I don't. I just sit there. And this is a true story. I'd interviewed with a company for 5 months to be the vice president and general manager of a $50 million division of this $5 billion company. They'd sent me all over the country. Over 4 months, I had to interview with like 7 different people. I had my trusty notebook. Every time I interviewed with them, I put more into it. So by the time I finally got to meet with the CEO of the company, who was the hiring manager, if you can believe that, my notebook was thick. And they flew me to Virginia. I went up to the top floor, this big CEO office, and we sit down at his table, and I just set my book on the table. And this guy was a great guy. I loved him. And he just couldn't stand it. He kept looking at it. And he's just looking at me and looking at the book, and he was so confused. And he said, "Did we give that to you?" And I'm like, "No, this is all my research. This is all my notes. I've been interviewing for 4 frickin' months. When are you going to hire me?" And he laughed, and he loved it. That's all I said. Now, I took notes. I opened it. But it's not a presentation. I want to stress that to Ron, too. But again, it's an option. It worked great for me. It may or may not work for you. I've gotten great feedback on it from people that have tried it. But that's how I stay organized. And the great thing about it, don't get the job with Coca-Cola, out comes the cover sheet, in comes the Pepsi sheet, right? So it's very flexible too. And then, did you get that job? What's that? Did you get that job? I didn't interview for this job. Oh, the CEO job, yeah, they hired me. Thank you. It was very good. Yes. There we go, you're on.
Okay. How do you go about doing this when most interviews nowadays, at least for myself, are virtual?
That's a great question. And so you already probably do a lot of this, but the key to any virtual interview, whether it's on the phone or on a Zoom call, is again, it goes back to being organized. So clear your whole desk off, whatever workspace you have, and then organize so you have everything at your fingertips that you might need. So I have a list of all my stories because they can't see it. So this is when you really can cheat. They can't see anything that's in front of me. So I have my stories, I have my research pile, I have all these different things spread out, my my resume that I can, if they ask me a question about my resume, it's right there. The 2 important things that I do on both is if I'm taking a phone call or I'm doing a Zoom, I have 2 big signs that I made on PowerPoint. One of them says, smile, and I have a big happy face. And one of them says, enthusiasm. And I have this little guy jumping up and down. Because when you're on a Zoom call, what's the purpose of those calls usually? Screening. Who said screening? And what happens in screening calls? There's 100 resumes and they're trying to get it down to 10. So most screening calls, we got to get through the day. So they're looking to knock you out, looking for that showstopper, right, Ron? Screen out. I like that. So I have a methodology for that. We can talk about that on strategy. But the most important thing, there's literally been studies, people can hear you smile on the phone. And if you don't smile, they can hear that too. So remind yourself with a big, huge sign. The other thing is enthusiasm. I talk to so many people that go, well, I've got this interview next week, but I'm just not sure. It sounds kind of interesting. I'm going to talk to them, but, I don't know. Well, don't talk to them, because if you do that, you're definitely just wasting 30 minutes of your life that you're never going to get back. You have to go into that with the utmost confidence that this is the greatest job you've ever seen, and I can't wait to get to the next round. So, I don't know, does that help? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I was going to say a suggestion.
I love suggestions. It'll come on.
A suggestion would be to take Post-it notes and put it beside the camera.
Perfect.
That way you're reading off the Post-it notes and looking at the camera rather than looking down and looking at the screen.
I would need a 60-inch monitor for that. I'd have so many post-it notes. Yes, sir.
So on the teams or the screens,
Yeah.
standing up with the stand-up desk when you were talking to folks,
Yeah.
absolutely helps the enthusiasm.
Yeah, when I owned my magazine that COVID killed, did I mention that? I used to do 100 cold calls every Monday. It is the most, I thought, my jobs over the years, this was just a few years ago, I thought my jobs over the years with Coca-Cola or Coors were hard. Making 100 cold calls on a Monday, that's as hard a work as I've ever done in my life. And I found that I was better when I stood up, for sure. But not everybody has a stand-up desk. But standing up gives you the ability to breathe more effectively than sitting down. So if you can, that's wonderful. I highly encourage that. But again, this is all about individual style too. So everybody has to have a plan, and which is a good segue to execution. So the things that I like to kind of remind people about executing is that, and we're going to talk about a live interview here, but I'll briefly, that's that, right? Do I need to move? Of course it is, UCLA, Mike. USC Film School, we got all the good stuff. So let's first talk about screening interviews, which are on Zoom, they're on whatever. So the purpose is to screen you, right? So I like to have a strategy for how I conduct a screening interview as the candidate. And I always start with an opening statement. And the opening statement, there's a sales technique called anticipating objections, where you've done this enough times to where you get the hang of when people are normally going to reject you. So you bring it up before they can do it. And so starting out with an opening statement for me is a way of sort of doing that. It's laying down a marker that I'm going to pick up later in the conversation. So what I usually say is, what's your name? Lady, Jamina? I can't hear you, I'm sorry. Demita? Demita. So let's say that you were interviewing me. You would say, well, Peter, it's so nice to meet you. And I'd say, Demita, I am so excited to get to talk to you today. I read through the job description, and this is exactly what I have been looking for. So thank you for talking to me, and I'm just really looking forward to a great conversation because I'm just so excited. Something like that. You can do better than that. And the idea is that you're laying down your excitement right from the beginning. And I'll show you why in a minute. So they're going to ask you questions. And the typical question that everybody gets is, tell me about yourself. Oh my gosh. So I have a little bit of a renegade approach to this. There's lots of things you can do. You can be pithy. You can give them quick little bullets. You can give them an overview. I take a more strategic approach. And I'd say something like this. I would love to, but before I do, is it okay if I ask you just a couple of quick questions? Now, what happens when you do that? One of two things. They're going to say yes or they're going to say no. But you said it. So in sales, we all know that when whoever's asking the questions is controlling the conversation. So by starting that early, you're establishing the fact that you're here to have a conversation. You're not here to sit through an inquisition. And equal business stature is a critical part of confidence in an interview. You have to feel like you have every right to be there. And the way we do that is by asking questions, in my opinion. So, two stories. The first thing I say is this a new position that you just created and budgeted for, or is this a position that was created, somebody got promoted, somebody left the company, somebody was terminated? It's an easy question. They'll say, nope, new position. It's great. Second question I have, I read through the job description with great detail as I flipped to tab number 1 on my notebook. And I said, I'd be curious to get your take on what you feel are the most important assets. You know, what's a perfect candidate look like for you based on this job description, and see what they say. I've had people, my daughter did this. She was interviewing in grad school. She wanted to get a job with Starbucks. So she sat down with the district manager, who was like 2 years older than her. She had at least 60 resumes in a folder, that none of which she had read. So my daughter, who was terrified to do this, I had to really tell her, trust me. She asked her that question, the lady talked for 30 minutes. She told her about all the problems she had with getting people there at 6 in the morning because people don't want to get up. All the problems, we've got all these baristas, we got 25 people in line, and they all run around and they run into each other and they get mad at each other, and we need people that are team players. So she talked about getting here on time, being a team player, having enthusiasm, providing great customer service. So my daughter just wrote all those down. And then when she said, you asked me to tell you about myself, well, let's start with 6 a.m. I'm an athlete in college. I used to get up every morning at 4 o'clock to train. 6 a.m. I get to sleep in. And she just went down and she answered each one of the questions at the end of her little tell me about herself. Lady said, when can you start? Does it happen that way all the time? No. But, and the flip side happens too. I coached a lady who is a PhD psychologist, vice president of organizational design for $1 billion company in Las Colinas. Company got acquired, she got laid off. Incredibly talented lady, immediately had interviews. So she went through flying colors with the HR department, and they wanted her to meet the CEO. So I've been coaching her up on all this stuff. And I told her, when you meet the CEO, ask him the question. And so she's an introvert. She's a PhD psychiatrist. She's like, you sure I can do that? And I'm like, hey, worst he's going to do is say no. I didn't believe he actually would. But what happened was she sat down. He said, so, Ginny, tell me about yourself. And she said, oh, I'd love to, Steve, but before I do, can I ask you a couple of questions? And he leaned into her and he said, let me make one thing clear here. I'm the CEO. I ask the questions. Are we clear? And like, wow. I said, how did that make you feel? And she said, great. I knew immediately I would never work for this guy as long as I'm alive. So there is a benefit to starting quickly with questions. But again, it has to be your own style. It has to be authentic. One of the things that I encourage people, this would be for face-to-face interviews, is don't forget that you are on from the second you walk in the door. So, I put my game face on when I park the car, and I am in full beast mode going in there. When I sit down in the lobby waiting to go in, I'm sitting on the edge of the chair. I don't sit in it. My phone is nowhere to be seen. My notebook is in front of me, and I'm studying it. And it paid off one time. I was sitting there, I was studying my notebook, and this guy walked by, stood in front of me for a second, and he said, are you Peter? I said, yeah, I'm Peter. He said, I'm John. I'm the CEO. I was interviewing with one of the VPs, but he just came out to take a look at me. He knew I was there, and he just wanted to look. He said, nice to meet you. And he walked off. So if I'd have been slouching like I normally would have been on the phone, I'd have missed that opportunity. He'd have walked right by me, and I'd have never known. So you got to be on it all the time. But you also have to develop this whole strategy of how do I want to communicate in the interview? Do I want to be disruptive and ask a question right from the beginning? Did you have something you want to say?
No, I just wanted to.
You're scaring me.
It's working. Okay. I know, huh? It'll get you. So I want to give us a little break. We're going to come back in about 30 minutes.
Oh, great. Okay.
And we will continue this conversation. And I've got some neat things to throw into it to hopefully to generate some questions.
Awesome.
And some of you guys, back teeth are floating. I can see it. So it's time to take a bio break. We want to take about a 20, 30-minute bio break. I will call you guys back to order, and we will continue. This is a good conversation. I'm really enjoying this being a hiring manager. I'm really enjoying hearing what I'm hearing. I want to throw one thing at you guys that I forgot to do when I had the opportunity this morning. Guys, I want you to go to transitionmasters.org. Check out that website. Every Monday at 4:30 our time here in Dallas, there is a coalition of coaches that get together and help you guys put together your story of everything that we're talking about. It is absolutely wonderful. It is a group. Most of the coaches are out of Florida. They're out of the Tampa area, but it carries a lot of weight. I think you guys send your resume in, all that sort of thing. There's a guy named Joe Jones. Rick is not your brother. And Joe facilitates it. But guys, once again, transitionmasters.org. Okay. Y'all go get some coffee, water, get rid of some water, all of that sort of thing. And then we'll reconvene.
I'm going to tell you a story about what Foster just said. This is a true story. Execute. Perfect. This is a true story. It happened six or 7 weeks ago. And it's all about the power of networking. All right. So I was sitting in my little chair at Market Street on a Friday, and Candace, who's sitting right in front of me, waves at me and goes like this, pointing to this guy sitting next to her, and says, "You need to talk to him." So she pushed him over there, and he sat down in front of me, and his name is Rodrigo, and he is, I won't attempt his last name, but he's originally from Colombia, and an amazing guy. I teased him. I told him he reminded me of Roberto Montalban on Fantasy Island. He was dressed to the hilt in a beautiful suit, and he sat down, and he was absolutely a mess. He said, "I was the general manager of a big hotel right in Las Colinas, and it got acquired, and I got laid off, and I've been out of work for 2 years." And he's in his early 60s. He said, I don't think I can ever find another job. And I said, "Rodrigo, that's just not true. God's plan is not ready for you to quit. You got way too much to offer." So I explained to him, like Foster was saying, that, the old expression, your network is your net worth. I said, what have you been doing to tap into that? And he said, "Nothing. I just send applications to hotels or whatever. I don't even want to work in a hotel anymore. I just want to be able to give back to the community. I've learned so much over the years." So the magic phrase that I was teaching him, and I would tell all of you, is when you meet somebody, say the following: "Who comes to mind that I should be talking to, that that I should be talking to?" That's a phrase that I've used myself personally. I'll share another story at the very end. And I said, "Have you done any networking?" And he hadn't. And so I pulled out my phone, which is part of the prompt. "Here, let me look at my phone." That's what you want them to say. And so I'm scrolling through my phone, and up pops this name, Marianne Kellum. Like, "Do you know Marianne?" And he didn't, which was surprising because of where he was working before. Marianne is the CEO of the Irving Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So I said, "You need to call Marianne. She's a sweet lady. She'll probably give you 20 minutes of your time." And that's what I told him. I said, "Ask for advice. Don't ask for a job, ever, ever. Ask for advice, that's all. And just say, 'Listen, I want to sit down and just see who comes to mind that maybe I should be talking to.'" So he said he would. And he called Marianne the next next week. And she took the meeting. And the 15-minute interview that he was doing with her, getting her advice, ended up being 2.5 hours. And at the end of it, she said, "I'd like you to come back on Monday and meet a couple of our board members. Could you do that?" And he said, "Absolutely." So we went back on Monday, and on Tuesday they hired him to be the director of community outreach. And he's thrilled. And that all happened in the span of 11 days. So those of you that have been unemployed for a while, don't think it can't happen. It can happen in the blink of an eye. It's just about connecting to the right person at the right time. That's all it is. And the only way you're going to do that, Foster, is it's a contact sport, right? Maybe not at UCLA, they don't, but that's why you're a Texas fan. We don't like Texas at USC. They kind of broke our dreams a few years ago. I brought it up. I deserve it. So that's, you got to get out, everything, like I said at the beginning, all of it's important. Have a great resume. Absolutely. A resume is not going to get you a job. It may get you an interview. You still, to your point, you still got to talk to a human at some point, at least for the time being. Yeah. LinkedIn is critical. Make sure you have a good, profile on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But the real victory is going to be networking and connecting with people. I don't talk about that in my book because that's almost a whole nother book about how to network and how to develop a conversation into a positive outcome for you from the job search standpoint. But there's one thing I didn't finish under execute. I mentioned at the beginning of an interview that you start by telling them how excited you are and how enthusiastic you are. And that is a marker that you set up for when you get to that point in the interview where they say, so, do you have any other questions for me before I wrap this up? That usually happens, right? So what I like to do is say, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have a couple. First of all, before I ask you, I just want to say, I mentioned at the beginning of this interview how excited I was to have the opportunity to talk to you today. But now that we've actually had a conversation, I am incredibly excited. This is exactly what I was looking for. And my question is, what are the next steps in the process? Who will I be talking to next? And there's some variation. Ron, I'm sure you've got some really good tips of those kinds of questions, but you're in sales vernacular, you're trying to close the deal. You're asking for the order. I was literally interviewing for a regional vice president of sales at this company where I had to go up to the CEO's office. And I got to that point, regional VP of sales, and it was not the greatest interviews. And I got to that, do you have any other questions for me? And he just looked at me and said, nope. And he got up and left. I couldn't believe it. He's a sales guy. He's supposed to be getting out his pen and saying, where do I need to go next? Who do I need to talk to? I got none of that. So we all have to be salespeople in this job search business, and closing the interview with that kind of a set of questions. And there are lots of them, and some are more, I like a certain way of doing them. Other people are more blunt. How do you think I did in the interview? All of those are fine. It just has to fit your particular comfort level and skill set of communicating. But that would be the last thing. And it all falls under that strategy of, I'm building a strategy. I'm going to go in with a plan. I'm going to do these things. And of course, Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And that can happen in an interview. I've had it happen in an interview. I've been rocking along on an interview, and in walks the hiring manager's boss. Now what do? That's why you carry extra resumes. Pull out a resume, hand it to them. Say, here's what I'm doing. Give me your 5 skills. This is what I bring to the party, whatever it might be. So we have to be adaptable. But the more we're prepared, the more adaptable and flexible we're going to be. And I can't stress that enough. Let me see if I can get this next one. So there's my beautiful graphic. Isn't that fantastic? I worked so hard on this thing. I thought it was genius, actually. Tommy, you're going to Italy. Is Tommy still here? That looks like something in Italy, doesn't it? Yeah. Nod your head. Just humor me. Yeah. So basically, our strategy has 3 tactics to it. And, prepare, organize, and execute. And the goal, whether it's, the thing I love about Frisco Connect, South Lake Focus Group, all of us do this for only one reason, so that you're just maximize your confidence, because that's the key. The more confident you are, the better you're going to do. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. It's not an inquisition. It's a conversation. And I had 8 or 10 people walk up to me during the break, and we had great conversations, every one of them. And I asked them, why do you get so nervous when you're sitting in an office? Because you can walk right up to a total stranger and have a great conversation with me. And that's in our head. That's why I showed you the golf course. It messes with your head. Try to keep it simple. And the last thing I'll tell you, and it's funny because I almost did this, but I'll be honest with you, I chickened out. My wife loves to sew. She does all kinds of embroidery and all embroidery machines. And so we were I was dragged along to a fabric store. And so jokingly, I saw this fabric that was cow print. It looked like a Chick-fil-A ad. And I said, oh, wouldn't it be cool to have a pair of pants like that? So I open up this box at Christmas and I have cow pants. I really do. And the reason I said, you know, if you wear them to Chick-fil-A on a certain day, they give you a free chicken sandwich. I didn't know that. But anyway, I almost wore them today, but I chickened out. But hey, I chickened out. That's good. But it's all about being memorable in an interview. You know, David Ogilvy is probably one of the greatest marketing minds this country's ever produced. He was the original Mad Men. I mean, he was the Madison Avenue media guy. And I just love this quote. If you can't be brilliant, at least be memorable. And that should be the goal in the interview process. That's why the more you prepare, the more you can talk, the better off you're going to be. So with that, Foster, I'm going to take more questions. I'm sure there's some questions. Anybody have anything they want to? You do.
I want to start something. So, okay, guys, how many of you guys in here have been hiring managers before, have been, I thought so. You guys are tough on us, you're tough on us recruiters, Adrian. So, here's the thing, guys. I'm glad you mentioned that memorable thing. Guys, even if we are on Zoom, if you are going to interview with Linda Smariga, I like that last name, Linda, so I had to pick on you. When you walk into Linda's office, or even if you are on Zoom, maybe you see something of interest to Linda. Maybe Linda likes golf, and she's got golfing pictures and all kind of stuff in her office. You notice this when you walk in or you zoom in, right, Z? So what do you guys think we might want to connect with Linda about? Oh, PGA just moved here to Frisco, didn't it? So, guys, it's about connecting, okay? That's what we want to do. You guys act like you like me because I like y'all, because I want to know what's going on. I want to know that Peter went to USC so I can make fun of him about that. I love Peter. I don't care he went to SC. Well, maybe a little bit. But, guys, there's always somewhere that you can connect. Right, Heidi? Where's Heidi? There's Heidi. Right, Heidi? Right, Jama? So look for that, guys, to connect with this person, because if you connect with Pete and you have got a connection point with Pete, Pete's ears are going to perk up a little bit more. Maybe I like this Foster guy. Maybe I want to hear what Foster's talking about. So if you come in with that confidence that Peter's talking about, and you sound like you know how to do this thing, you're going to listen. Candace pretty cool. And me and Candace like barbecue, and we go eat and we do all this stuff together. I'm going to listen to what Candace got to say, because she's a few rungs up higher, because we connected. I may not even know the first thing about Candace, but we got a kind of a connection. You guys you hear me knocking? Use that, guys. We're just people. The only thing wrong with corporate America is that people work there. So we have to connect with those people. And Peter likes me.
You're going to feedback later.
Oh, no, we're doing pretty good. Yeah.
Actually, that's good. He turned my mic off. That's
I wanted to bring that up and get you started on that.
No, that's fantastic. Are there any questions I can answer for you? Anybody? Yes, sir. In the back. Oh, I can hear you.
All right. So I know some people mentioned like websites and stuff earlier where you could, do certain research on companies. As I was watching the other week on a Life After Layoff. You probably heard that YouTube channel. Like he mentioned stuff on there about finding out about a company's layoff record. And so what would be some good websites to find things like that on? because
No clue.
Target, because you always talk about finding target companies, and so those would probably, if the company doesn't have a good layoff record, it's probably one you don't want to add to your list. So that's why I asked.
Makes total sense to me. Anybody have any ideas? Yes, sir.
The state of Texas, anytime you're going to lay off, I think 3 to 5% of your workforce at any time, it's reported a month early. So if you go to our commerce in Texas, you can actually see whether or not you're getting laid off.
Nice.
It'll actually be there, but they have to disclose it if it's above a certain percentage.
That's amazing. That's what I love about this group. There's experts on everything in here.
Didn't hear that. I didn't hear that. Someone's going to need to talk into a microphone and give me a website.
I was going to say, Texas has a website that strictly you have to report when you're laying off a certain percent of your workforce. So every week they're adding new companies to that where you can see whether there's layoffs are happening. But
Well, what's the name of it?
It's probably texas.gov, something like that.
Texas.gov website.
Okay.
I'm sure I get it to Peter since I'm sitting next to him. I'll find it.
Oh,
We'll figure it out. That's a great question, though. Yes, Foster.
Rick's a recruiter. He's a lot better recruiter than I am.
Rick.
I'd like to get your comments about how to follow up after an interview.
That's a great question that I totally booted. I should have brought that up. But one of the problems I have is I'm kind of a creative person. Like my wife would have, when Pete asked me to do this 4 weeks ago, she would have started writing like a 50-page script for what she was going to say. I started working on this like Thursday. And that's sort of the way I've done a lot of things. But and also Pete said, just keep it simple. So I took advantage of that. But follow-up is critical. And I'm sort of a huge fan of written follow-up, not emails, handwritten notes. In fact, I would carry them with me on an interview, and I would make an effort to get the business card of everybody that I talked to, write them a thank you note in the car, and hand deliver them back to the receptionist before I left. So that is an option. The longer that you wait, the harder it's going to be to remember everything. So it's like I learned a lesson when I was slinging advertising for my magazine. I'd go to networking groups all the time. And in the beginning, I would just collect business cards. And I would go home and I'd put them on my desk and say, I'm going to put them into my scanner, you know. And then a week goes by and I've got 60 business cards and I don't remember any of them. So what I started doing was I was sorting people at the events. And I would ask them if they would like to get together for a coffee. And I would take out my phone and I said, what's good for you? I have Tuesday at 2 or Wednesday at 3. Which one of those works best for you? And I would book the appointment. And I highly encourage you to do that when you're networking. Yes, sir.
Peter, we got a question back here.
Actually, to answer William's question.
Yes, you found it?
Oh, I found it. So it is.
Please tell me you're not getting laid off.
So the name
Oh, you
of
already
the
are.
website is Warn, WARN, tracker.com. WarnTracker.com.
Genius.
Okay.
This is a powerful group. If you're not
IT
networking,
guy.
if you're not networking in this group, you should be.
Peter, we got a question back here.
Warn
Did you have another one?
I've also seen that statistic on Glassdoor.com. Glassdoor. I have two questions.
That's great.
That was good. Thank you for that, sir.
Two questions.
Yes,
My husband is 6'8".
Wow.
So,
I am when I stand on this.
you talked about connecting to people.
Yes.
Devil's advocate here, he hates it when people say, "Well, how's the weather up there? How tall are you?"
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's advice. I was going to ask a question, but maybe that's advice. Be careful how you, because again, my husband hates that because everybody says it, and it's really old for him.
Yeah.
So that may be just him, but yeah, that's the question is, that was kind of the question, is, how do you pick what, if they're covered, if their office is covered with LSU stuff, are they
Go Tigers.
are they going to get tired of being asked about that?
It's such a hard question to answer. My attitude would be have fun with it. But my mother-in-law, there was an old TV show in the 60s, that's how old I am, called Get Smart.
Oh, man.
It's hilarious. And the lead actress on the TV show was a lady named Barbara Feldon. And Barbara and my mother-in-law looked exactly alike. I mean, you couldn't tell them apart. And she would get stopped in airports and say, "Are you Barbara Feldon?" And she got so sick of it, she said, "Yeah, would you like an autograph?" And then she would sign Jacqueline Mendel. And they'd look at it and go, "What?" And so, it happens. And, most celebrities hate that. And you can be a celebrity just by being tall. My initial reaction is just have fun with it, saying, cloudy with a chance of, whatever. I don't know. But, he's got to find a way to make it work for him. There's no real easy solution to it.
He takes it gracefully, but, he tells me after the fact.
I can appreciate it. I mean, it's just, you get a little tired of it. People tell me I'm fat all the time, so I get it.
I get that.
My second question is about, again, connecting. How do you feel about, jokes or personal information? I've gotten in trouble with jokes. It's.
You notice I didn't tell any. I let the pastor do it because God's got his back. My dad was just this incredible joke teller, and I kind of grew up in the shadow of him. So I can't tell a joke, so I don't try. I'm not a fan of it, but if that's your personality, then do it. Because the one thing I really encourage everybody to be is just be authentic. That's what makes you memorable.
Right.
And even, where are you? Torrin, are you still here? He's got an interview, and it's about a management job, and he's led project teams and stuff, but he's never had a title as manager. So they're interviewing him for a manager. What should I do? Just tell him. I've led projects. I've done a lot of stuff where I'm leading a team, but I've never had the title of manager. And why would he? He's 24, So don't feel bad about it. Just be honest about it. That's the key, I think. Mm-hmm. So did you say you have a question?
No, I said I had a follow-up to her comment.
Okay. Please follow up.
Yeah. Just some advice that I had is when you're talking to someone for the first time, just going to compliment someone's appearance, compliment on something they have control over. So a person has no control over how tall or short they are, so don't comment on that. People may not have control over the color of their hair, but unless it's like styled very uniquely, if you can tell they spent some money, put time and effort into it, and people appreciate that more, because if you compliment on someone being tall, they're like, "Thanks, I did nothing for this." You're like, "I really like your very brightly colored hair." Then they're like, "Oh yes, I put a lot of effort and money into this." So
that's great.
That's
I love
the
that.
advice that I have.
Find something to compliment people on. Jason, I love your hair. Sorry.
We're in there, Jason. I'm catching up with you, man. I've got an idea.
Yes, sir.
I've got a big mouth. I'm going to hold my...
It's because we're
away
this.
from, yes, because I'm... Okay, guys, let's consider this. I stole this from Trevor. One more thing I stole from Trevor. Consider this. Guys, when you are going to do a thank you letter, maybe you do a thank you video. There are, I would say, Trevor, BombBomb and Loom, Loom. Check those things out. You can make a video, guys. And in that video, you might be able to quickly, concisely tell that hiring manager something that you weren't able to tell them in the interview, or maybe it was a question that you felt may have been something that you needed to approach. Consider that. We had, over the last couple of years, I guess you could say, Trevor and I have talked to a lot of people that had a lot of positive feedback from that. Some got a job because they were totally blown away with the fact that this person knew to do something like that.
Hey, Foster,
Yes.
if I over here.
Yes.
If I can add to that, though, being head of IT in the past, a lot of times our virus software blocks all those things. they wouldn't even get through to the recipient if it's an attachment or a video or anything like that.
Sometimes,
So
not
you
all
wanna-
the time,
You
but
want to make sure
sometimes.
it goes all the way through.
Yeah, make sure of that.
So one quick follow-up to Foster.
Go
Sorry.
after it. Try it, guys.
Okay, I've lost control.
Yeah, Ron was saying if you make it a URL instead, link it to the video, you have a much better chance of it getting through there.
No, IT guys will really hate that. My son's a cybersecurity guy. So here's an idea, okay?
Okay.
Let me just do a quick follow-up on this. So when I was doing my magazine, I would do events every month, and I would invite all of my advertisers to come to these events, and nobody read the email. So I discovered a website called QuickPage, and QuickPage is unique from the standpoint that you not only can create a video, but you can attach something, like a resume, or a thank you note, or a thank you something. It's a subscription-based thing. I was paying like $29 a month, but I recommend, like with BombBomb, you text it, you don't email it, so you need a cell phone. Same with QuickPage. But so I tested it, and I sent out to my advertisers an invitation to come to the Pacific Table in Las Colinas for my event. And it's got all the analytics on the back, and 94% of my advertisers opened the video within 15 seconds of receiving it. So nobody reads emails anymore. Everybody's texting, everybody's doing so. I think if you boil it down, be creative in some sort of a way, be memorable, do something that's going to be unusual, just to get on the radar screen. I'm almost finished with a book called Love Does. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's an amazing book by an amazingly crazy guy who's a very successful lawyer out in California. And he wanted to get into law school, but he did terrible on the LSATs. So he went to the law school he wanted to go to, and he went to the dean and asked him to let him in. Just asked him, I want to be in the, all you have to do is say, go buy the book and I'll be in. And the dean just kind of laughed and shuffled him off. Well, he went there every day from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and sat on the bench across from the dean's office for 5 straight days. And at the end, on Friday, the dean came up and said, all right, go buy the book. And he got in. He never applied, he never did anything. He was creative, and he was tenacious, and he kept going. And we got to try all those things when we're looking. So you had a question in the back. You've been very patient. We have a microphone back there.
Yeah, it's coming.
That's pretty good. I like that.
Oh, you were talking about eye contact earlier. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
I talked about what?
Eye contact.
Eye contact.
For
Oh, right.
brief, yeah.
See, this is what you do when you work on the slides on Thursdays. So on the other presentation I did, I discovered this theory. It's from elementary education. It's used with great success in teaching young children how to learn. And it's an acronym called SLANT, which is so simple and laughable. It's so S-L-A-N-T. So the S is sit up straight. The L is lean forward. The A is ask questions. The N is nod your head. And the T is track the speaker, which means make good eye contact. And that's part of this interview strategy. So one of the things I told you when I went into the lobby, I would sit on the edge of the chair. I would do that in the interview as well. If you guys just kind of scooch up to the front of the chair and sit on the edge of these chairs and just see how it feels. It makes your back straighter because you're not leaning back. And that whoever said stand up when you're talking, you'll talk more effectively when you do that. So that was, thank you for reminding me, that was a key part of this interview strategy is how do I actually present myself in front of a panel interview or whatever it might be. So yes,
one
you
more
had a
question out here.
Did I answer that? Is that okay? Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, I have a question here.
Perfect.
From a guy with an accent. And
You're asking for a friend? Yeah.
no, we arrived here in Texas a year ago, and I'm now 58 years old, a guy who been working in several jobs and been occupying several things. It's like jack of all trades. Is this right? And coming here, well, God blessed us with a place that we pay nothing to occupy. And I'm in a Head Start. I work with kids in a school, but it's not paying that much. And I have passion for several things, and it's just hard for me to see what's my next thing is gonna be. So if you have an advice, I would appreciate it.
A couple things that come to mind. First, I worked for Coca-Cola in France. So my total French exposure was 3 weeks of Berlitz before I went. So you can imagine how terrible it was. And I encountered a lot of people that amazingly spoke French when I was over there. And all I would do, and I would recommend to you, I would ask them to speak slowly. So with your accent, if you're in an interview, just slow down a little bit. Because we get excited and we get talking, we all do it. And speaking slowly and a little more succinctly would super help that. The other thing, where are you from originally? Jordan. So finding communities of Jordanians, there's definitely a community in Dallas. And I don't know how plugged in you are to that, but what you need to do is start there and then meet people and ask them who you should be talking to, because they can connect you throughout their network from that community. And I highly recommend starting there, but then continuing that everywhere. I'm just, there are tons of people in this room that know somebody, I guarantee you. And do we ask? No, but we should. And that's the part that Foster harps on every time I listen to you talk. And he's 110% correct that, just like I did with Rodrigo, that took me 30 seconds and I happened to scroll down to Marianne and boom, rest is history. And that's how we're going to do this is, you got to have a resume, you got to have your LinkedIn, all those things, but don't obsess. I talked about how this will mess with your head. Don't let it, Just go out and try to meet people and try to talk to people and say, who should I be talking to? I went to a networking event. A buddy of mine, he's a life insurance guy, does this networking event over in North Dallas. And walked in, and the mayor of Addison is there. What a great guy. Bruce. I know Bruce. I've known him for a long time. I didn't realize he was now the mayor. But pick up the phone, call Bruce, make an appointment. Bruce, you're the mayor of Addison. Who should I be talking to in Addison that can use my IT engineering background? And he'll tell you, because he knows all the businesses. Rodrigo met the mayor of Irving last week. And the mayor actually said, Rodrigo, love to have you come by my office and get to know you. People want to give you advice. They really do. We just have to have the courage to ask for it. And for me, personally, was the biggest battle. Because I'm like, what do I know? I've been unemployed for 2 years. Nobody's ever going to want to talk to me. Not true. Yes, you have a question.
We have a question over here too when you're done.
Okay, we'll do this one. Who's got the mic? We'll do that one first.
I have a question. What advice would you give for recent grads, like college students, that are fresh out of college and then gunning down in June, the loan people are calling saying your grace period is almost over. So what would be some advice that you'll be able to give us?
The same advice I've been talking about is you got to network. And the challenge that a lot of recent grads, they don't know how to network. And you talk to somebody, my first person I would meet with is Foster, wherever he went. Foster, teach me how to network, because there's an art to it, and it's about doing people favors. When I was slinging advertising, in the beginning, I was just trying to get meetings to sell ads. My whole life changed when I realized, if I go and tell them, hey, let's get together and figure out ways that I can help you. And I started saying, my first thing out of my mouth when I would sit down with the potential advertisers, what can I do to help you? How's your business? And so making connections, really legitimate connections, believe it or not, there's huge demand for you, huge. We just can't find you. And so being found is part of the challenge. And how do you be found is put yourself out there. Yeah, Foster?
I have an idea that formed into a question for you guys. Is anyone else in here a Jordanian or from Jordan or have been to Jordan or have family from Jordan? I'm networking
besides
for
you.
you. I just wanted to ask that question. Here is Mike Materian. I said your name right this time.
Yes, you did. You do a better job than Trevor, by the way. There you go. So, I am Armenian. Not Jordanian, but Armenian, so that's pretty close. My wife is from Aleppo, Syria. She's been to Jordan a few times. So look me up on LinkedIn.
There you go. That's what networking is. Did we answer your question? Oh, but you raised your hand. Okay. I thought Foster asked it for you.
First one with the mic wins. Exactly. So thank you again for this information. My name is Alkeisha Rodriguez. I'm a technical implementation project manager, and I'm asking a question on behalf of the other side of the interview process. You get the interview, but you don't want it.
You don't want it?
You don't want it. How do you decline without burning a bridge?
I don't know. I've torched a lot of bridges in my life. I would just say thank you so much. I really enjoy it, but I think I'm going to move in a different direction or something very friendly, very professional. But you just tell them thanks, but no thanks. I would send it to whoever first contacted you.
Well, I would recommend that perhaps you go through the interview and ask that person if they know anybody else on their network that maybe we might be able to
Even
help
better. You're so smart, Pete. I would have never thought of that. I'm just
Not
too
always.
greedy. I love that. Yeah, I mean, you know, if the last person you talked to was the hiring manager, you can send him a note back. But it's a nice problem to have. I would love to have had that problem. I don't think I ever did. Any other questions? Yes, sir. We'll get you too.
I was actually going to make a suggestion as far as I just had an interview yesterday, and I've got another interview tomorrow from somebody that I worked with in Hong Kong when I lived in Hong Kong. So maybe reach out to your friends. Maybe reach out to your friends in Jordan to see if they know anybody here, because this is a global network. I worked with somebody, when they spoke to me yesterday, they said, hey, you came highly recommended from the director in Hong Kong. And I needed to speak to you. So, and that was back in March. And I finally got somebody, she now has time to speak with me. So reach out to your network in Jordan, see if they know anybody here. And then as a comment for you as far as posture, a real good way of doing this is to stand up, find your rib cage in your hip, and sit down and have that distance not change.
Wow, technical.
Now
Time
I
out.
got to cut us
We're
off.
done.
It's time for us to go to orientation.
Perfect.
Okay, where's John? Oh, there he is. Okay.
John is throwing
Which
the
room will
technical.
we be in, John?
150.
Which room will we be in, the newcomers?
152.
Okay.
There for lunch?
Can I just say thank you? You guys are amazing.
Thank you, Peter.
It's really a blessing for me to be here, and I am here. If anybody needs any help, I'm happy to help. I want to see you be successful, and you got this. I know you do. You just haven't met the right person yet. Just keep working at it. But thanks so much, and feel free. I'm going to hang around if anybody wants to talk.